Hello, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I would like to thank you very much, the Organization of American States, for this invitation to be part of this online week where the main topic will be open educational resources. I'm speaking from rainy Montevideo right now here in Uruguay. My name is Guilherme Canela. I'm the UNESCO Regional Advisor for Communication and Information in Uruguay, and I'm responsible for this issue in South America. This is a great moment worldwide for discussing this topic. Is the first time the idea of open educational resources was raised was precisely in a UNESCO meeting in 2002, which means we are now 12 years with this expression, open educational resources, being discussed and now implemented in different contexts. During those 12 years, many things has changed in the educational environment, in the ICT environment, in the access to information and knowledge environment. And open educational resources is really a strong possibility for changing education, for changing the quality of education worldwide. And so, addressing this topic right now is really different than addressing this topic 10 years ago. And the agenda is much more positive. There are more interest about the topic. And of course, there are still many challenges related to the idea of open educational resources. So I would like to invite you to join me through this quick walk through the main challenges, the main ideas, the main projects, the main policies we have been discussing about open educational resources recently. And this is really a moment for raising the discussion, for sending your questions, doubts, comments through this online forum. And from my place here in UNESCO Montevideo, I will be more than happy to establish a dialogue with those interested in this idea of open educational resources. So thank you very much for joining us today with this discussion. And I will start with a quick presentation on what are the main topics I would like to cover today on this main idea of open educational resources. So, you see in this first slide, you can find UNESCO links to our webpage dedicated to open educational resources issue. So in those two links in English and French, you will find all our materials about open educational resources. We have been publishing, and I will talk a little bit more about that at the end of this presentation. We have been publishing different guides, studies, and also the so famous right now Paris Declaration, which I will mention further, on this topic. So you will find community where you can find open educational materials that have been uploaded in this community. So I strongly recommend that those that are really interested in this issue and want to go further in this discussion could take advantage of all the information you will be able to find on those two links that you can see right now in your screen. So, sorry. So this is the general introduction on what I want to briefly discuss with you throughout this presentation. So first, a general idea of open educational resources related to other bigger issues that offer the important concepts and also the international standards that support the idea and the policy of open educational resources. So I want to talk a little bit the connection with knowledge societies. I want to underline the relationship, the important relationship with freedom of information, and I want also to draw your attention to how important it is to discuss the policies of ICTs, information and communication technologies, for education when we are underlining the basic topic of open educational resources. So after that, of course, we are going to stress a little bit more the definition of open educational resources. I also want to highlight the benefits of open educational resources. I would quickly tell you UNESCO Open Educational Resource Program, and then I will talk a little bit about what we did in the 2012 World Open Educational Resources Congress, where the Paris Declaration was approved. And finally, I will draw your attention for some challenges we face right now, when policy challenges, when we are trying to implement real policies related to open educational resources in a given country. So, knowledge societies. I'm sure that you have already heard about the idea of information society. With the technological revolution we are facing in the last decades, it's more and more common that we are living in an information society. And we have, in 2003, all the countries under United Nations discussed under the so-called World Summit on Information Society what are the key elements of this idea of information society. Since then, UNESCO is underlining a broader concept. It's okay, we should talk about information society, but we should go further than that. We should talk about knowledge societies with this plural, because knowledge is a very diverse idea. We have different kinds of knowledge. We have different ways that societies use that knowledge to promote sustainable and inclusive development. So, with this idea that knowledge is so important for nowadays societies, that actually what we are seeking when we are discussing the quality of education, when we are protecting human rights, promoting freedom of expression, promoting freedom of information, etc., is that we want to foster knowledge societies. We want that the knowledge will be the key tool for our development as countries, as nations, as regions, and as individual human beings. And under this big umbrella, as we will see, the idea of open educational resources is quite important. It's very difficult to have an inclusive and democratic knowledge society if the knowledge is not based on an open concept. Open educational resources, but also open scientific resources, open government. So the idea is that the access to the different sort of knowledge that are important to build our societies, to foster our development, should be as much as possible based on an open concept. This is, of course, very much related to the idea of freedom of information. Every human being, according to the Article 19 of the Human Rights Convention, the Human Rights Declaration, has this right to access to information, this right to seek and impart and receive information, which is more known as the right to freedom of expression. But this right is also connected to the idea of accessing public information, having access to quality information. And again, for this, the idea of open education, open access, open government is really important. And finally, another umbrella concept that is quite relevant in this realm when we are discussing open educational resources is the idea of the centrality that ICTs, the information and communication technologies, can have in the world of education, in fostering quality education in this new era, in this new world. And the open educational resources is not only related to digital content, they can also be applied to other formats of other content formats, but of course they are central in this idea of digital content. So we can't discuss open educational resources without connecting them with the real policies towards ICTs for education that are being implemented in a given country, in a given city, in a given province, in a given school. So we need to be very attentive to this connection. We need to understand the ICT policies to further discuss and foster the OER policies as well. So what are open educational resources? What we are talking about? So you can see the definition on the screen. I think it's very simple, and we need to have a process of awareness raising about this definition. Any type of learning materials, especially e-learning, but remember I told you that's not necessarily only digital materials. In this case, what are the characteristics of these learning materials? They are released under an open intellectual property license or in the public domain, allowing free of cost and legal reuse, revision, remixing, redistribution, the so-called 4Rs. So this is really important. We need to assess if a given material is an open educational resources, applying this equation, applying this checklist. We can reuse, we can do this revision, we can remix, we can redistribute. If the answer to all those questions are yes, then we have an open educational material and we can start working under this concept, this paradigm. What kind of examples of open educational resources we have? There are several. This is just a small list, but any educational resource that can be conceived can have an open educational format. So curriculum, frameworks and maps, course material, tests, assignments, documents, especially test books, multimedia applications, a game that's used to teach math, a kind of online or video documentary that's used to teach biology, a poem that is used in a given digital way. So if they are under those rules that I have just explained, they are open educational resources. So you have some examples of different strategies, different projects that are built in following these characteristics. Some of them very, very famous that are being used in many different parts of the world. So, what are the benefits of open educational resources? And I hope this slide it's readable. We have very interesting things. We are here under a paradigm of sharing knowledge. So this is one of the key and central things. Improving the quality of education means also empowering the different stakeholders involved in this: teachers, students, the administration of a given school, etc. So when we are sharing knowledge, parents, families, we are empowering those different stakeholders. So this is one important benefit of open educational resources. We are also trying to improve the availability of those materials. we are trying to improve their technical quality. And how we can do that? When you are sharing knowledge, you have different sort of people working on the improvement of a given material. So this, as we can see quite easily, is the basic idea of the educational process in what we call the 21st century skills. So how we improve education as a group, as a joint work. And in that sense, open educational resources are quite important. We also can improve pedagogical research, the quality of different images, coherence across courses, mechanisms of accreditation, even the credibility, because the idea is that we have different people checking those sources and those materials, no? And so then in this screen you have lots of different benefits that can be we can draw those benefits from the idea of open educational resources, and we need to work those benefits more when we are discussing open educational resources policies with decision makers and policy makers. They should understand the importance of open educational resources to improve those same policies. And this is also true when we are talking with different stakeholders, with teachers, with parents. Why is so important to discuss and to have open educational resources debates and also in the implementation of those policies? So with this screen you can show to the people you are having a dialogue about open educational resources why they are so relevant, why they are so important in the discussion of improving the quality of education. So what is the UNESCO Open Educational Resource Program? I won't take a long time on that. I want just to give you a quick overview, and then you can further go to our webpage and see details about every one of those different areas. As I told you, the concept was created in UNESCO in 2002, so we are now 12 years working with this idea of open educational resources. We have, as a multilateral organization, we have a role of standard setting, so that's the importance of the Paris Declaration, which I will discuss later. But we are also a laboratory of ideas, so that's why we are discussing policy guidelines. That's why we are stimulating OER research chairs. That's why we are stimulating platforms and those on related to OER. But we are also an organization that are interested in capacity building. So this is what I'm doing now, sharing my information about open educational resources with you, but also through those projects and platforms. This is the idea of capacity building different stakeholders that are interested in open educational resources. And we are also an organization that should be responsible for stimulating international cooperation, South-South cooperation among countries, stimulating those who already are doing nice things about open educational resources to share these with other constituencies, other countries, other players, other stakeholders. So this is one of our tasks as well with our program. And finally, we are an organization that should work as a clearinghouse, accumulating knowledge about this specific issue, open educational resources. So through all those platforms, you will be able also to find further information about OER. So this is an example of our publications available in many languages on our guidelines for open educational resources, in this case in higher education, but also a base guideline on open educational resources. They are all available online in several languages. And so this is a kind of overview of our different web pages, our community on open educational resources. I strongly recommend that you should first register in our communities if you are interested in those issues, to give a look on what is going on, the different debates that are going on related to these issues, more specific debates, more general debates on open educational resources and other knowledge societies related issues. Sorry, my computer is going a little bit fast in changing the screens. So the World Open Educational Resource Congress. Quick word on this. The idea was to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the 2002 forum, when this concept was the first time built like this expression, open educational resource. In this 2012 Congress, the Paris Declaration was approved, but one important element that I would like to underline is that before the Congress, we had 6 worldwide regional forums where stakeholders from all the regions in the world were able to share their ideas, their views, their good practices, their questions, their doubts, their fears, their challenges about this OER policy. So when we had the World Congress in Paris, this was already ongoing process where we could collect information and knowledge from different parts of the world and different sorts of stakeholders: government, civil society, experts, academia, IT companies, etc. So in our webpage you will find more information, Paris Declaration in several languages, and specific how this process was built during the Congress. So, Paris Declaration. Here we have a kind of a roadmap, the map of the treasure, on how we can stimulate OER as a public policy elsewhere, in your country, in your community, in your town, in your state. First, we need to foster awareness about this. We need to relate to the ICT idea, to the ICT policies, as I have underlined before. We need to reinforce the development of strategies and policies about OER. I will come to this particular point later. We need to promote the understanding of what is open licensing frameworks, like Creative Commons, for instance. We need to support capacity building on those issues. It's not trivial. We need to foster the discussion about this to improve the quality of content related to education, so producing those contents in an open educational resource format, in an innovative digital format is not easy. We need to do that. We need to support this. We need to foster capacity building on this issue. We need to do that with alliances, sharing knowledge, sharing best practices, also sharing mistakes, what we did wrong that we would like not to repeat. So this is also important. Encourage the development and adaptation of OER in a variety of languages and cultural contexts. We can't forget specific populations who speak different language. We can't forget accessibility for children and adults with disabilities. All those kind of things should be considering when we are discussing OER policies. No, we also need to encourage research on OER, because this should have further developments. And finally, of course, when we are discussing the acquisition of educational materials using public funds, the OER idea is even more important. Stimulating that governments start buying educational content in any format using open licenses is a very important demand, and we should stimulate those debates and those discussions with our governments. So as I told you, when we are talking about knowledge societies, and I'm almost finishing this, we need to consider open educational resources related to many other sources, many other kinds of open solutions programs. So open access, free and open source software, open mapping, open data, etc. So we need to consider this as a sort of different schemes, a big puzzle where open educational resources is a part of this and should be working connected to these other ideas. Challenges. We have lots of good projects, but we need to start scaling up. We need to make those projects more sustainable. They should be discussed in medium term and long term, with a medium term and long term perspective. So we need to transform projects into policies. And this is a big challenge. We need to involve decision makers, we need to involve policymakers. So that we need to do that, we need to showcase this to policy and decision makers. We need to show that this is important. We need to show the benefits of open educational resources. We need to demonstrate to them that it's interesting, it's valuable. It is the case of adopting open educational resources policies. And of course, again, we can't forget the overall picture. We can't forget this idea of what is this important in the context of knowledge societies, of ICTs for education policies. And of course, we have a big question here for all this. When we want to change or to improve it, to foster the quality of education, every tool is relevant. Every tool can help. Open educational resources, ICTs for education. But we need to first answer this question. What is the education we want to have? We can't change education without answering this. What are the education we are looking for? What are the contents we are looking for? And then all these other ideas, these other concepts, these other tools will be very valuable. They will help us. But first, we need to decide what are the education we really want to offer to our children and young people. Sorry, this is just the last slide with our contacts and details. Oh, where is the last slide? And I will be more than glad to receive questions, comments, doubts, suggestions from all of you. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure discuss this issue and being here using this technology, this ICT, doing this online in a virtual forum. And I hope that we can be in touch soon about those issues. Thank you very much.